So are you struggling to maintain no contact after your breakup or divorce? Many people are. It's not an easy thing to do. So no contact is frequently advised, especially in the case of an abusive ex or a narcissistic one, or simply one that you're in a toxic relationship with. One where you need a little distance. You need to detox, basically. But no contact is easier said than done. Here are some of the reasons that we struggle going no contact with our exes. One of the first and most basic is loneliness. You miss that partnership, you miss that companionship, you miss that body in bed when you wake up, you miss that voice on the phone at the end of a long day. And so you reach out. But here's where it's really important to be honest with yourself. Are you reaching out because you miss them? Or are you reaching out because you just want somebody? Be careful. You want to be with somebody because you want to be with them, not just because you don't want to be alone. We also will reach out because we want to be friends with them. We want that relationship to transition smoothly from a romantic one to a friend-based one. And so we think we can do that. And we reach out hoping that we can just shift the pattern ever so slightly and everything will be okay. We can kind of have our cake and eat it too. We can have them in our lives, but not as our love. But when you're dealing with a difficult relationship, it doesn't happen that way. I'm not saying that friendship is, off the table forever. Maybe at some point in the far future, you can reach that place. But you can't just go there right away. It's not a switch. You can't just, go from lover to friend without all of the extra emotional baggage overnight. Doesn't work that way. We reach out because we're looking for closure. We think that we need that one last conversation with them, or we need to tell them this one last thing, or even more often, we want to hear this one last thing from them. And then we tell ourselves, as soon as I get that one thing, then I'll close the door and we won't have any more contact. The problem though is this is, sort of a snipe hunt, because you're never going to get exactly what it is that you're looking for. We often assign some magical power to those words and phrases that we want to hear from our exes, and they don't exist. So even if you establish contact, and even if they do tell you what it is you want to hear, you're probably not going to have the reaction that you're anticipating. And so maintaining contact just for the hope of closure, it's kind of a never-ending game. Sometimes we struggle with no contact because after a breakup, we focus only on the good. It's something that happens after the death of a person frequently, where their entire life is kind of sanitized and whitewashed, and everybody looks at them as, this amazing person who could do no wrong. And with a deceased person, there's not a lot of harm in that. But when it's with somebody that you're struggling to disconnect from, it may not be the best time to focus on their good traits, because that's what's pulling you back. You've got to remember the good was not everything, because if the good was everything, you'd probably still be together. So what I like to recommend is, at least in the beginning, focus on some of the negative. Yeah, it's not going to feel great, but it's also going to remind you why you don't want them in your life. If you're struggling with the no contact, even write that down, put it next to your phone or make it your wallpaper, or do whatever you need to do to give you that little reminder of, oh yeah, that's why I don't want to call them. Now, I don't recommend focusing on the bad forever, because it tends to make you pretty miserable. And it also can steal some of those good memories from you. So do it in the beginning. And then once you're okay with no contact, once you're in a more peaceful place, then it's time to let the good back in. Sometimes we struggle with no contact because we're making excuses for them. We give them the benefit of the doubt at the expense of our own well-being. And yeah, it's good to consider people's motivations. It's good to consider what they've had to contend with and to try to understand why they're doing what they're doing. That being said, just because you have empathy for them, that doesn't mean that you need to let them in. There's a difference between those two. It's okay to still care about them, but also keep them at arm's length. I like to call it detached compassion. And frankly, I feel like that's the best possible stance that you can have with an ex. Want them to be okay, but want them to be okay from over there. And then finally, one of the other reasons that we struggle with no contact is we want things to be different. We have this illusion that maybe this time, things will work out in a different way. Maybe this time we won't fall back into those same patterns. Maybe this time we'll get along. Maybe this time, and we just keep playing that game thinking, hey, if I just keep doing it again and again and again, at some point it has to work out. Well, you know that saying about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different response? Yeah, it's not going to happen. The thing with no contact is it's hardest in the beginning. They say that love is like a drug, and when it comes to our neurotransmitters, they treat it that way. And so you're going through withdrawal. And in the beginning, that's really difficult. It's really, really painful. But if you can give yourself some space, give yourself some distance, and it gets a little bit easier every day. Now, if you go back and you take another hit, so to say, well, you're starting the clock all over again. So remind yourself what your reasons are for going no contact, whatever they may be. They're valid and they're important. So remind yourself of what those are. Keep those reminders handy for those moments when you're feeling weak and when you're feeling lonely and when you're more likely to reach out when you shouldn't. No contact isn't easy, but the result is often great peace. It can be worth it.